Hello, I'm Toycat, and welcome back to the second channel video. Today I have some more geography of Toycat for you all, and in this episode of everyone's favourite second channel geography series, we're going to be talking about Greenland, because Greenland is a country everyone's probably heard of. If you've looked at a map ever, you probably see this giant icy island here, and you're like, ah yeah, that's Greenland. But truth be told, people don't know much beyond that, besides the fact that it is giant, which by the way, it's not as big as it seems. It looks like it's the size of Africa, but yeah, it's because of the way, when you have a spherical globe, which we do, and you try to make it into a flat map, you're going to create some problems, and the big problem you mainly have is the north and the south are heavily distorted. But anyway, that aside, Greenland is still the biggest island on Earth, but again, lots of people don't know too much about it, so today's episode will maybe inform you about something or other. So yeah, let's get straight into it, shall we? So let's start by talking about the fact that Greenland isn't its own sovereign country. You might think it is because you look on the map and it says Greenland, like how it says Canada and how it says all these other countries, but truth be told, it's like an autonomous country within the Kingdom of Denmark. So Denmark is actually a kingdom consisting of three kind of constituent parts. Denmark, the landmass, this big place here is the biggest constituent part of that, but there's also the Faroe Islands, again, suspiciously close to the UK, probably should be a part of that, and then you also, once you go past Iceland, you've got Greenland over here, also a part of the Kingdom of Denmark. However, there's a lot of autonomy within that, and in reality, Denmark kind of just controls the foreign policy, the military, and, the currency and all that sort of stuff. Most of it really is kind of handled offshore. But although Greenland does have its own parliament, and it does make its own laws and stuff, it is kind of just worth noting, it's technically part of Denmark, but also technically separate. Kind of how, when you visit the UK, even if you've been to Scotland and England, they're kind of the same country, but they're also two separate countries. You just got to keep that in mind. It's the same kind of deal there, or how when you go to America, Georgia and Alaska are the same country, but they're not the same country. It's that kind of deal right there. But with that said, let's talk a bit more about this island, because it is the biggest island on Earth. At least according to Wikipedia, I decided to fact check myself. It is the biggest island on Earth by a massive margin, if you count Australia as a continent, which most people do. It's the biggest island by 3 times the size of the second one. So here's the second biggest island. This is New Guinea over here, where it's split between two countries. This is the second biggest island on Earth. Here is the biggest one. You can see there's a little bit of a size difference. Some of that is because of our map, but it literally means that Greenland is 10 times bigger than the United Kingdom. This island over here, or even just Great Britain, sorry, it's 10 times bigger than that landmass, which is so crazy. So yeah, biggest island on Earth, but how many people actually live there? Because it is so, far north, and the climate is so icy and cold, even, by the way, the people aren't actually Danish in origin. There actually aren't that many people living there. There's only 60,000 people living on the entire island. And again, that doesn't sound, too crazy, like, oh, 60,000, that's a lot. I've got, like, 4 people living in my house. That's, like, 15 times as many. But it actually is a ridiculously low amount, especially given that it is a massive country. So, to put that in perspective, 60,000 people is less people that live in my town I live in. I live in a really tiny town in the UK. It's like the 49th biggest. So, like, there's 50 settlements in the UK, bigger than Greenland in terms of population, and bear in mind the UK, Great Britain is an island 1/10 the size. And to put that in perspective some more, this is some maths I did myself, because of the way Greenland actually is. If the entire world had the population density, super low, 60,000 people on an island this big, if the entire world was that populated, there would only be 4.2 million people living on the globe, as opposed to 7 billion like we have today. That would literally be like thousands of years in the past, and that's a good way of describing Greenland, really. It's kind of like, an old Viking place that still exists today, because of the fact that modernizing the whole place is kind of tricky. So a lot of stuff that people consider to be part of, like, modern day society is kind of tricky to do here. So transport between the places is done by air, but for the most part, you can't really do it, except to get to Iceland. Air Greenland usually only do flights to Iceland, and sometimes you'll get, like, a boat or a flight to Canada, but for the most part, if you want to get in and out of Greenland, you have to go via Iceland, which is just over here, and actually isn't too far away, which means, in some places, you're going to be taking 2 connecting flights to get there, and that's the big problem. If you want to get to Greenland, if you want to get around Greenland, it is an incredibly difficult thing to do. They have 14 airports, or they have more, but they don't actually have runways on the other airports, and basically, yeah, getting around a place with only that many people is going to be tricky, of course, but it's even crazier than that, because the capital city, which is Nuuk, it has about 15,000 people living there, or 16,000 according to Google. About 16,000 people live in the capital city of Greenland, so this is the biggest city on the entire island. Again, this big. This is the city just over here. That's how many times you're scrolling before you get here. This is the biggest city, and although this is just vaguely civilization looking, you can kind of see my point where it really looks like a... Wait, this is a terrible way to prove the point. Yeah, you can see my point where it's mostly just, like, really old-timey looking houses, and how you imagine people would live in, like, the 1700s. Again, not as a knock, it's a really cool way to kind of see back into the past a little bit. And then, bear in mind, this is one of the, most populated settlements in the world. You can see the Google card beneath you. That's a weird little thing. And yeah, it's also the only part of, Greenland which has street view. So if you want to look around, you can. There's some really stunning things you can see. And the really big thing you want to keep in mind is just the climate here is such that even in the summer, which is when all, like Street View stuff is taken, you can see there's just snow everywhere around the place because, again, it's that far north. So, yeah, speaking of snow being all over the place, I mentioned how, like getting around is so difficult. Getting from any settlement in Greenland to any other settlement can only be done by air, or can only be done by boat, or you can kind of do it by snowmobile or snow dogs, but there is no roads between settlements. If you want to go from Nuuk to, let's say, like Atangmik here, again, the settlements to the north here, you're going to have to do that by boat, or you have to do that by air. There is no roads within the country, and the big reason for that is because pretty much every single settlement is by the coast. There's a kind of an exception here, which isn't really an exception, and you can kind of look around the place, and you can see some places like that, but the vast majority of places are by the sea, and people live there, and they fish, and that's how they do their life. It's not a country where there are people who just live there and do stuff separately, because it is such a, ridiculously climate place. And yeah, like I mentioned, no roads between places, no rail links between places, and pretty much no way to get somewhere besides by boat or air, and even then it's kind of questionable. So like, if we take just a random place here, this is a reasonably big village. It has about 1,300 people living here. Let me show you around this place. So this is one of the slightly bigger villages, slightly bigger towns in thing, and you can see this. This is what I mean by like it really looks like how you'd imagine a Viking place would look. So yeah, Greenland, really awesome, really cool, just place that does exist. It has the population density such that it would be like thousands of years in the past, and the rest of the world like that. It's a place that isn't really livable, and that people only live there because they just historically have. It has a trend of emigration. It has one of the highest suicide rates in the world because, again, with a population size that low, one person does it, and that's pretty horrible in general. And yeah, kind of the point I wanted to raise here with today's video is Greenland, pretty big, but pretty bizarre, and if you want to visit it, it's going to be tricky. That's the kind of points I wanted to raise today. I hope you did all enjoy today's video. Geography of Toycat, talking about Greenland. Hopefully you learned something about this lovely place. Again, you can't really... Even though it's a massive island, you can't really actually explore the whole thing. It might as well just be this, and there's a little bit over here too, by the way. It might as well just be this, and then a few settlements over there, because for the most part, it's just over here the settlements are. Because for the most part, it's not an inhabited island. It probably won't ever be until, I don't know, like global warming kicks in and gets really serious. And it's just one of those fantastic places on Earth, which is kind of bizarre. Along the same lines, just while we're here, there is Svalbard. Svalbard is always worth mentioning because it's kind of the same deal, but it's Norwegian instead of Danish, except the people are still kind of distinctly separate. And there's a sea vault here where they are preparing for, well, they're not actually preparing for the apocalypse, but you can send your seeds there as like a backup. So if your country can't grow the seeds anymore, no seeds should go extinct, which is pretty cool. And again, this Svalbard is like, this big compared to this big, and only 2,000 people live here, despite being, again, bigger than most land masses where like millions of people live. So fun fact, you might have enjoyed. Anyway, hope you did all enjoy this video. Oh, wait, there's an island, sorry, there's a place where, like, the Google Map picture is just a bear in a cabin, and it's just like, what is that all about? But anyway, we should leave that aside for now. I think the Arctic is one of the cooler parts of the world because it's so hard to get there. I like snow a lot, and you get a lot of it if you want to see ice and snow and stuff, and fun facts you might have enjoyed. So, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you all in another video. Second channel, don't care. Bye.